And without further ado, I would like to introduce our presenters, Beth Mcneil and Shipley from Texas A&M University.
Well, good morning. We're glad to see y'all here. Thank you for joining us. We're very excited to be bringing you this presentation on promoting digital citizenship with students and using a decision-making methodology. I do want to share that this methodology came out of a class project that my senior level methodology students do. They had the foundation, and then we kind of took it and tweaked it and streamlined it with digital citizenship to meet kind of a void in the literature. And we hope that you'll find this a useful technique for you. So in your COVID world, you are trapped places and enjoying awesome webinars, but if you could be somewhere else right now, where might it be? So we'll let you vote here. I'm not driving this, you are.
Sorry, that was my fault.
Okay. Can we get the next slide? Oh, look. Okay, 16. Can we go back a slide, Jackie?
You should be able to click. Is it not working?
Okay, well, I didn't want you clicking and me clicking too. One of us got to have a steering wheel. I'll take it. Okay, it looks like we're beach folks. Yes, well, I'm with you. And then we have some introverts that are going to their backyard. And then I suspect my mountain people, y'all are people that don't live in the places where it's cold. So you're good to go to cold places. And all you campers, enjoy your nature. That's interesting. You know, in these times, it's kind of good to think about in the future, we'll have places that we can be going. So that's kind of fun. Thanks for checking in. So what we're going to do today is, there's a little delay in this, just to kind of go over the objectives and what we hope you walk away from, is we're going to take a really close look and evaluate the impact of using predetermined choices in the decision-making process. And this is kind of a different perspective when we're talking about teaching students how to make good, healthy decisions. Typically, we ask them something and they're like, oh, yes, I'd always do the right thing, when we know that isn't always the case. So we're going to look at, well, what happens when you don't get to make the good choice? We'll also do some assessment of healthy responses to internet safety scenarios and how to handle unwelcomed or undesirable situations. And then we'll talk about, as a group, our role as educators to teach safe, responsible, and ethical digital citizenship. Just some background on the pedagogy associated with the methodology. There's two foundational pieces that are really being addressed in this methodology, and we're really trying to work on development of analysis and evaluation skills. And we know that when we can tie situations to students where they're analyzing and evaluating, but they have the opportunity to incorporate their own values and their own experiences, it tends to solidify the learning more deeply. We also understand the role of peer-assisted learning and peer education, and this methodology capitalizes on those two platforms for the development of health skills. The methodology is tied to multiple of the national health education standards. So if you are in a situation in your position where you're needing to meet standards, you're going to be able to hit quite a few here. We also have aligned our particular version of this methodology to our state standards, and because our state standards are built on national health education standards, there's a lot of overlap. I suspect that will be true for you as well. And so I kind of want to share with you the approach of today's webinar. We're going to kind of mix back and forth between delivering the lesson, so we can show you what the lesson might look like if you were working with students. But we'll also be doing some sidebar and explaining some sidebar features about the lesson and what makes it useful for you. So we'll be moving back and forth in that perspective. I do want to communicate that this lesson is designed to where you could do it one-on-one with a student, or in small groups, because I know we have a lot of counselors and social workers who might need not that big classroom perspective. So I think it's going to be applicable across the board. So we're going to start, and I'm going to change the way that we poll, just because I want each of you to kind of see where each other is. And so we're going to use the reaction buttons that are located on the bottom right-hand portion of your screen. You'll see the little smiley emoji that looks like the one that's on the picture next to use the reaction buttons. And we're going to ask you some questions. And if your answer is yes, you're going to respond with your reaction of the thumbs up. Just a thumbs up is all you need. If it's not yes, you can just not click anything. So let's kind of get a look at what's our from the perspective of this room, how much interaction do we actually have online? So how many of you use Instagram? Using Instagram, thumbing up, okay. Okay. Good.
Okay, what about TikTok? So thumbs up if you use TikTok.
Oh, Williams and TikTok are there.
We suspected less, so that's about right. Okay.
What about Twitter? How many of you use Twitter? Oh, they're tweeting your little tweets. Okay, y'all have to vote. Get your thumbs up going or not. Or maybe we're not all engaging on the internet. Okay, couple of tweeters.
Okay, so this has to do with gaming. So thumbs up if you use Xbox Live.
Oh, look at Robert. He's a gamer. All right. What about Snapchat? How many of you are using Snapchat? I suspect we'll see a little bit more here. There we go. More on the Snapchat train, good.
And then just to kind of encompass anything we might have missed, put a thumbs up if you use any type of social media. So I suspect for some of you that would include Facebook.
So what she's doing is really covering the old people who use Facebook, so my thumb is up.
Okay, so with that, that is definitely part of the lesson that you would want to incorporate with your students to kind of get a feel for what social media platforms they are using. It's very likely that as young people, they are using social media that you might be less experienced with as a counselor, social worker, teacher, whatever your role might be. So given the COVID world that we are living in, we know that young people are spending a lot of time on social media. If you didn't know, your phone has a feature that actually, unfortunately, tells you how much time, screen time you consume each week. And so it's really, you know, this methodology is very timely given the circumstances that we are in. So before we move forward, I think it's important that we all get on the same page about what digital citizenship means, because it's really the foundation of this lesson. And so the definition before we watch the video can really be summarized by your habits, your actions, and consumption of online content. And so when we talk about digital citizenship and the responsibilities that young people are given, we know that they're not always making the most healthy choices when they are online. So let's look at this little video that summarizes this definition for you.
So sometimes there's a little delay in the switching back and forth. Thank y'all for being patient as we kind of work through the technology piece of this presentation. Let's see where we're going here. Here we go. Go ahead.
All right, so that video summarized what we mean by digital citizenship, and so why this is important. We know that the literature shows us about a third of young people have experienced being bullied online, and the number decreases to those who admit bullying, but it's still significant. We know that when they are bullied, it impacts their feelings of school safety. So if not feeling safe while they're in school, then of course it's going to also impact their academic performance as well. Most online or social media platforms have some type of age requirement. So for most of them, it's 13. And about a quarter of all young people have pretended to be older in order to get a social media account. And probably the most scary is that 1 in 20 children admit to meeting with someone that they met online but did not know originally face to face. So when we're talking about online safety and we're walking through this methodology, you know, sometimes as adults we might think, oh, I would not do that, or, you know, I wouldn't put myself in that situation, but we know that young people are. So the importance of teaching this is very significant.
I think I clicked it. So as part of the methodology, we kind of go over the statistics with students and kind of help set the stage for them to understand and for them. So sharing some of that previous information would kind of kickstart the lesson off. You know, maybe doing some true, false, or fact, myth types of questions with those particular stats could kind of segue into the lesson. Then what we would do in this lesson, baseline with students and provide them some content via this video to recognize what are the 4 key areas where you can become vulnerable through the internet. And so we would have them watch this video. This video is produced by a group called amaze.org. And if you're not familiar with this organization, this is going to probably be the best nugget you're going to take from this webinar, because this particular group does an incredible job at taking really hard topics, sexuality, all kinds of different, even puberty, growth, and development. And they've designed developmentally and age appropriate videos. Even though they're cartoon in character, they are videos that students will relate to and connect with. I would highly encourage you to visit their site and take a look at the list that they have chosen. We're going to show you a snippet of this video as if we were in the lesson. So to introduce the video, I would kind of talk about, they're going to talk about 4 key areas. And for each area where you could be at risk, they're going to offer you some suggestions for how you can keep yourself safe in those 4 areas. And I want you to watch for those, because we'll talk about them after the fact. And one thing to really look for is, what is grandma's rule? So we'll watch the video now.
Love and kisses from, oh, it's on. I'm sorry, guys. I know I've told you I'd share everything with you, but this letter is really, really private. Okay. Now it's safe in my top secret secretive box. The internet is a great place to do research for school. Share pictures with friends, play video games, or check out the latest trending videos. But it's important to remember that there are billions of people who access the internet, and not everyone has good intentions when doing so. You should think carefully before you share personal information, pictures, or videos on the internet. Even if you think it is private, nothing on the internet is completely private. It's a good rule of thumb not to put up anything that could embarrass you here. If you wouldn't want your grandmother to see it, then don't post it. And don't share private information with people you don't know. Trust your instincts. If someone approaches you online and makes you feel uncomfortable or in danger, stop communication with them immediately and tell a parent or another trusted adult. It's best not to meet in person someone you've only met online, even if you've been communicating with them for a long time. They may not be who they have told you they are, and it could be dangerous. If you do decide to meet someone from online, it's best to meet them in a public place and to not go alone. Always take a friend along just to be safe, and let someone else know exactly where you are going and who you are going to meet. Bullying someone online through email, social media, text messaging, or any other website or app is called cyberbullying and is still a form of bullying. It's often better to block, delete, or try to ignore bullying messages than to respond to them. If that doesn't work, getting help from a parent, school counselor, or another trusted adult might be a good idea. That's especially true if the cyberbullying contains threats. Remember to always keep your personal information private. Check your privacy settings to make sure that only your friends can see what you post. And never, ever share your passwords with anyone else. The internet could be a wonderful place to explore. Just remember to stay safe while doing it. Oh, what was it? My dog's birthday. Shoot, okay, that didn't work. Oh, I know. Last 4 digits of my cell number. Okay, that wasn't it. That might take a while. Until next time, don't forget to visit me at amaze.org or go to my YouTube channel.
Here we go. Okay, so the video covered 4 key areas that included cyberbullying, avoiding communication with strangers, privacy, and sexting. And they gave you tips for each of those. And so what we would do next in this lesson is we kind of lead a discussion with the students on what are some tips that you caught out of the video. So we're going to use the chat feature right now. We're going to ask you to kind of play along as if you were in the student role. So for cyberbullying, what was one of the tips that they offered that could help keep you safe in relationship to cyberbullying? I would appreciate it if y'all would just jump right in the chat room and plop some on there and let's see how well we kind of got the content from the video. So cyberbullying, bullying, sending inappropriate messages, posting things. Good. Sarah Fuller, not respond. Stop sharing. Delete the negative comments. Excellent. Okay. What are something they taught? What is the way they can avoid communication with strangers and keeping yourself safe from strangers? Let's switch over to that now. Let's see some chats on how we can keep ourselves with strangers. Not meeting in person. Checking your privacy settings. Setting it on just friends. Good. Only posts of friends can view the message. Excellent. And so that also talks about our privacy features as well. Did anybody catch anything else from the video other than changing your settings? Your grandma rule. Good, you caught the grandma rule. Love it. And what about, does that relate to the sexting? What are the tips that they gave us associated with sexting? Although they didn't flat out say sexting in the video, it was alluded to. Grandma's rule, there you go. So we would kind of talk about those ideas that came up and kind of converse with students and get them to validate, is that realistic? Can that really happen? As we guide them through. And then after that discussion, so that now we all have the same foundational content, we'll take them into the application or the methodology using the flowcharts. So the next thing that happens, next, is that, oh shoot. I think we're gonna go, good. So I'm gonna go back one, hang on, I jumped too many. There is a delay between my click and the screen actually moving. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the application activity or the methodology here. And really it's divided into two parts. There is a part one where the students work through the flow charts, and then a part two where they answer some discussion type of questions. This can be done completely individual in a one-to-one situation, where they could go through the whole thing by themselves, or you could pair them and have them do it as partners. You could put them in groups of 3 or 4 and they could discuss their answers. And then we'll actually show you a third opportunity to incorporate the kinesthetic aspect where students actually get up and move. So let me just kind of walk you through the methodology and what is happening with the students. So after you've had this discussion from the video and gotten their foundational information content down, you would provide them with the flowcharts, which you have access to these flowcharts out of the chat link that was available, and I think it may have been sent to you in an email prior. So I'm going to work through the strangers flowchart with you, so if you want to pull that one up and you can follow along, I split the flowchart out to kind of teach you how to work through the chart. So the students are given a flowchart and they're given a coin, and they're going to flip the coin, and if they flip heads, then their answer will always be no to the question in the flowchart. Even though it might not be, that's the answer they have to go with. And that's the beauty of the methodology, because you're forcing them to think about, what if I didn't do the right thing? If you flip tails, then the answer response is always going to be yes to the question. So we'll start the flow chart with, this is the flow chart on strangers. And in the first box we read, you recently got a new Xbox Live account and you are super excited about using it to interact and game with friends. Someone you don't know just tried to add you as a friend. Do you accept the friend request? So typically when you give scenarios like that, students go, oh no, I wouldn't do it, but you know they would. So we need to think about, well, what might happen? And that, I think, is the beauty of the methodology right here. They're going to finally examine consequences of the actions. So a lot of times we tell students the rules, but we don't really let them explore what could happen if we don't follow the rule. And that's what I like about this methodology. So if you don't have a coin, there is a link right here to an online coin flipper that's available, students could use, but typically they like the kinesthetic piece of flipping a coin. So let's say I flipped my coin and I landed on tails, which means my answer to this question must be yes, I'm going to accept the friend request. So I'm going to follow down the flow chart to the next box under the yes. And it says, while gaming with a new friend, you also began chatting through Xbox. This person says they're from the school right down the street. Then they ask you if they want to meet in person at the park. Will you go to the park? So I flipped the coin again in the second box, and this time I flipped no. It's interesting to watch this. When students do it, they're like, oh good, I did the right thing. And so they kind of begin to put their values in, associate, would I really do that? Which is that good analysis piece. If in the previous scenario they had flipped heads, I put over here to the right what that box would have looked like, where they would have gone. We didn't go there, but just to show you the differences in what happens in those answers. And what you'll find that's very interesting is as students work through this, they'll go over and they'll read what would happen if I'd have gone the other way, which is another good motivation for analysis. But I did decide that I would not go to the park. I picked no. And so now I'm going to see what happened to me because I didn't go to the park. I hope. Mm-hmm. Did it get clicked? Mm-hmm. Oh, good. Oh, I'm there. Okay. You don't necessarily think it's a good idea to meet someone at the park that you just met through Xbox Live, so you refuse to the offer, even though you enjoy talking to this new friend. They ask you for your phone number so you can talk more. Do you give them the phone number? And so I flipped the coin and oh, yes, I did. So let's see what happened when I gave them the phone number. Should I? Okay, good. After a few weeks of texting, your new friend asks again if you would like to meet at the park. You think it might be safe now because you've gotten to know them a bit more. And when they ask you to meet again, do you agree to meet them? So I flipped the coin and I got tails. Now I'm going to stop for a minute and I'm going to have you look over to the box at the right where we didn't go. As you progress through, you'll, some of the flow chart, like if you said no every time and you flipped and got the right answer every time, lucky you, but you can see they finished the flow chart at that point. And at that point, they would move on to the discussion questions and be proud that they didn't make any bad choices. But typically, they'll end up in the side of the flow chart that challenges them a little more. So I did agree to meet them this time because I flipped tails. And I get to this box that says, before going to the park, you see your dad. And your dad asks what you were doing and where you were going. Will you explain the situation to your dad? Flipping the coin, I end up with flipping heads, which means no, I'm not telling. So yes and no is not always the right and wrong answer. Sometimes a no answer isn't what you should have said. And so the flow chart's kind of designed to keep students on their toes. If you're looking at your stranger's flow chart, you'll notice that now that we're on heads, it's going to loop me back into the flow chart to analyze more decisions. So I decided not to tell my dad. And now I meet the stranger in the park and I realize it's actually an adult who's trying to kidnap you. Oops. So strive to make healthier choices in the future as you're finished. And you'll get students that go, oh man, no way. And they kind of react, but it brings up that reality that this can really happen to them. And so it notes that they are finished. From there, then they take some time to individually answer these 3 questions. And there's only 3 questions on each chart where they kind of think about what other devices do I use online. There are different questions depending on the flow chart that you're on, but most of the questions will end with the number 3 that talks about if you could have changed the predetermined choices, what would you have changed and why would you do it? And that is that evaluation piece, that analysis piece where they bring in their own values. And so that's kind of how the flow charts work. You can set this up where you are just doing 1 flow chart in a day. Maybe you want to do multiple flow charts a day. We're going to walk you through all 4 of them so that you see the content for all 4. But the lesson, the methodology gives the person delivering a lot of autonomy to choose what's going to work best for your clientele, be it your students or if you're doing some one-on-one counseling. To end the flow chart, I would pull the whole group back together and I would flush out that last question. So what would you have done differently? Why would you have? And this is where we get a lot of that peer interaction, peer discussion, finding out what their peers think. And we know that that is one of the main characteristics of healthy curriculum for health education that's been shown to be effective is when you have that peer interaction and they find out what their peers are thinking. So we could end that flow chart by talking about, as a large group, what happened and what changes we might have made. So now it's going to be your turn. I'm going to let Dr. Shipley take over.
Okay. So we are actually going to have you practice in breakout rooms. So the head to toe staff, Susan's going to put you into breakout rooms for you to practice going through 2 of the flow charts.
Can I interrupt a bit? It might be a really good idea when you go into your breakout rooms to turn your videos on so that y'all can see each other as well.
So when you are in these breakout rooms, and Jackie, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, we tried using the whiteboard feature. If you have the whiteboard feature, you can use this feature in order to kind of write your text, so to interact with one another. If you don't have it, and we know everybody's Zoom accounts and settings are different, then just use the chat feature while you're in your breakout room. So when you go to your breakout room, if you are in an odd number room, you are going to complete the privacy flow chart. If you are in an even number room, you're going to complete the flowchart on cyberbullying. We are going to give you about 10 minutes to work. And what you'll find is that may be enough, that may be too much, but we're going to kind of gauge what we're working with. Before you get started, I think it would be helpful for you to introduce yourselves in your breakout rooms, kind of talk about your role, and then decide, do we want to work through this together or do we want to work through it independently and then use the chat feature? We're trying to give you some options for what you think would work best. So a few things about breakout rooms, if you've never used them on Zoom, is you are going to be asked to leave this main meeting room to go to a breakout room. You want to hit yes. And then when you get asked, we'll give you a warning to kind of bring you back, and it will say, do you want to leave the breakout room or leave the meeting? Don't leave the meeting or you will leave the entire presentation. So just leave the breakout room and come back to the main meeting. It does take a little bit, like a few moments, so don't panic if you're kind of waiting. But we'll hop in and out of the breakout room so that we can answer any questions for you if any arise.
So just a reminder before we go to breakout rooms, if you are odd numbered in an odd number breakout room 135, you will be doing the privacy scenario. If you're in an even number group, you'll be doing the cyberbullying, and then to stay in your breakout groups until you get booted back into the main meeting.
Okay. So Susan, have they been given their invitations? Yes, okay. Okay, so pay attention to what room number you're going to.
Lynn, Monica, Clone Jackie, are you having issues getting into the breakout room? Are you here?
So we're going to give them a few minutes and then start hopping in and out, just so we're not hopping in and out too soon that they haven't even started.
Sorry for changing the slides. Every time I clicked on anything, it changed.
I think when you would show the videos, then it wasn't letting us click. So yeah, it's weird.
I think it's fine.
Yeah.
We did have one person who, I don't know if you're probably already addressing it, but they had a question at the beginning on what's your definition of bullying? And they asked, what about parents who are signing their children up for these accounts at young ages? So,
yeah. Okay.
All right. So Susan, when we come back from breakout rooms, will you bring up those questions to remind Beth and Megan? Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, Beth, you should be able to jump around.
Okay, thank you. Here we go. I just want to see where we are so we don't. Okay,
I'll come back.
you come in. Okay, you want to go? You want to be logical? You want to start at 1?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
Jackie, how many breakout rooms are there?
7.
7, okay. So whenever we do these, you always just, when I get the breakout room invitation, I just hit later.
Yeah. Monica, are you having issues or just must not be there.
Did you see the participant who tried to get in just a few minutes ago?
No, I don't have any of that open. Whenever I click on anything, it changes the screen. It changes the slide.
It said for a minute that someone was trying to get in and then it went away. So, but I mean, it was at 10:38, so it's a little late.
Okay, Monica, audio.
Oh, she doesn't have audio. Okay.
Monica, did you get the invite to join a breakout room? You can still participate through chat in the breakout room.
Maybe she can't hear us.
She said she doesn't. Can you please send it to me again?
Okay. If you just click on the more link at the bottom with the 3 dots, there's the join breakout room that she just has to click on.
Great. Do you see that, Monica?
So there will be the 3 little dots next to reaction, and it'll say join breakout room once you click on that at the bottom. And if you click that, it'll take you. Yeah, there she goes.
You're on mute.
Can you repost the documents? They're not being able to get to them.
Yes.
Sure. The flow chart.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to check in on room 2.
Let me try and open it also. So I just reposted it.
If there are more questions like that, Susan, kind of find a place to interject while they're going through that topic.
Okay. That's kind of what I was.
Yeah. So I would just kind of say, hey, Beth, we have a question in the chat related to this. Do you want to address it now?
That was just a weird one because it was so early on in the presentation, like they had just started. So it's like, I didn't want to immediately jump in and like, mess with the flow because it was like the first slide.
Also, we had somebody in the chat ask about CHES credits. Can you tell them to email Claudia, Savannah Jean?
I thought we weren't doing CHES.
We aren't unless someone requests it. Then we can try to get a hold. We've been approved for CHES. We just, for like head to toe, we just haven't heard back.
On this, yeah. Okay.
This.
What was her name? Did you see it? I didn't even see that one.
Savannah Jean. She may have just sent it to me.
What is it? Sorry?
Savannah Jean.
Savannah. Okay.
So whenever they all come back to the Megan breakout room, message her privately and tell her to email Claudia regarding the CHES credit.
Okay, sounds good. So I reposted that flow chart. I was able to open it fine. So if anyone can't open it, it might just be an issue with their computer. Everything seems to be going smooth.
I know at the beginning, I had the participants tab dead smack in the middle of my screen. So I kept trying to exit out of it and it would change the slide. And I was like, I'm sorry.
I'm sure we'll get the flow of it. It's just some getting used to certain weird things. Your script helps a lot because then, you know.
Also, the polls are not popping up on my screen.
Yeah.
You're muted. Oh, there they go again. She gave us a thumbs up.
So you're not getting the polls, so I wonder why.
For the next one, for the final poll, we'll launch it. I'll like wait a couple seconds. I'll say, we're gonna leave this open for 10 more seconds. Please make sure to answer it. And then when you close it, just say the poll is closed. That way I can move on to the next part.
So when I launch the poll, wait for the answers, and then I always should share the results for everyone to see.
Not for the attendance checks.
No, yeah, not for the attendance checks, but for the vacation one, or if we're doing the what's your profession, those ones we share. Yeah, no, not the attendance checks.
Yeah, so yeah, I couldn't get rid of it. And then I don't think I'm recording this right because I didn't have it set up for side-by-side mode. So I have no idea what it's gonna look like. But I couldn't switch it to side-by-side mode because anytime I clicked on something, it changed the slide. And I was just like, dang it, I didn't think to do it before the meeting started.
Yeah. We'll get the hang of it.
Very,
It's set to record all of you, so don't worry.
So just so you know, we started at 10:40 and it's about 10:47. Okay, sorry.
You're on mute. Oh.
Muted.
How much time is left?
About a minute.
Okay.
So
Let's give them.
So are you gonna give them the 1 minute warning?
you have that power.
I'm gonna give them the 1 minute warning. Okay, breakout. I'm gonna close all rooms. No, broadcast. I'll just do 1 more minute.
Say come back to the main meeting.
And then after that minute, we'll close all the breakout rooms to force them back.
We only have 10 minutes left. The video is like 5.5.
If you want, you can notify the participants. We're going to run a little over on time. If you have to leave, that's okay. But just so you know, you can just let them know that.
Oh, you brought him back.
It's a really quick minute. Sorry about that, y'all. It was a really quick minute. I forgot that we had changed the settings on that. So get thumbs up just visually. Did you have a chance to get through the flow chart? Then I know y'all's group kind of got delayed a little bit. Are y'all okay? Yes? Okay, good. So Shipley, I'll let you take over.
Share the screen again. So we know that was fast, and some of you got through it and some of you didn't. And either way, you'll have the files. So hopefully you can spend some time outside of the webinar just kind of navigating and exploring the flow charts independently. So what we would want to do is bring this conversation back to the large group. And so let's just, for time's sake, we'll use the chat feature. For the privacy groups, what was one thing or one strategy you discussed for protecting yourself online? So just kind of give us some insight into your conversation of how you can protect yourself. Yes. So not accepting friend requests, make your accounts private. Maybe one more.
From the privacy group.
Yeah, so I see a lot of comments about adults, right? And having some sort of intervention or resource to turn to if you're feeling unsafe or jeopardized online. So for my cyberbullying group, what would happen? What would be something that you could do if you noticed a friend or a peer who was being bullied through some sort of social media platform like Instagram or Twitter? How could you help? Yeah, so tell an adult, report the page. Okay, so for the sake of time, we're counselors. Yes, and we have so many wonderful counselors on the webinar with us today. So obviously you want to make sure when you're working through the lesson that they are getting those key takeaways, right? That they know what's something that they can do to protect themselves and what they can do if they themselves are being bullied or someone that they care about, a friend, a peer, a classmate is being bullied as well. And I'm really emphasizing the adult intervention. So in 50 minutes, we have showed you a few options of how you can do this methodology. One thing that's really important is thinking about your kinesthetic learners. I know that I am definitely one who needs to get up, needs to get moving. And so we're going to show you how you could do this kinesthetically or actively with your students. And so with this method, we used paper plates. And so you can kind of see how our diagram was set up. And so it's just taking the flow chart that was on paper and kind of making the yes, no. You could use like sidewalk chalk. You could use just sheets of paper. You could use painter's tape. I mean, we're all in education. We have very little resources most times. So we know how to be innovative. So you can see at the star would be the start line. And then they would be reading the statements out loud with one another and flipping the coin. And so obviously, depending on the age group that you're working with, you know, coin flips can not always go as planned. So probably prepare for that. And then the remaining of the instructions just kind of walks you through how to do this actively. So you would repeat through the flow chart until you hit the end. And then you'll see in the video, we actually discussed the 3 questions out loud with one another, and then you could bring it back to the whole group. So here is, you might see someone you recognize in this YouTube clip, but here we are acting this out.
Be sure and watch for the cameo appearance of my favorite dog.
You and your partner have been dating for a while, and things are starting to heat up between you intimately. You feel like things are moving a bit too fast, and the way your partner is talking to you over text messages is starting to make you feel uncomfortable. You really like your partner and don't want the relationship to end, so you share your feelings. Later that night, while you are both texting, your partner asks you to send a picture of you without clothes on. Do you send it?
Ugh, tails, yes.
Bad decision. You are afraid if you say no, your partner will end the relationship. So you send the photo. Your partner then asks you to also take off your undergarments and resend the picture. Do you do it? Tails, yes. You decide to send the picture, hoping your partner will be satisfied and stop asking you. You get another text asking for more pictures of other areas of your body. Do you send it?
No, yes.
After this experience, you use your decision-making skills to end the relationship. Although you are sad, you believe you made the best choice and everything seems to have worked out in your favor. Even if you might have given into peer pressure earlier, your last decision prevented you from being a victim of sexting. It is important to note the best way to avoid repercussions of sexting is to not do it at all. So, let's talk through our decision-making process.
Started rough.
Are there any other accounts or methods besides texting that you and your friends use to allow you to share inappropriate photos to one another? If so, what are they?
I mean, Instagram, you can direct message.
You can send private messages on Snapchat
And TikTok.
and Twitter.
Twitter, yeah. So there's a lot of different.
different platforms. It's very tempting.
In the flowchart, why was it beneficial for individuals to share their feelings with their partner at the beginning of the scenario? What is something you would say to the partner if you were in this situation?
Well, what I would say is I don't feel comfortable from the very beginning. So I would have never been in this situation where I've been asked to do more and more outside my comfort zone.
Okay, so it's kind of setting the expectation and boundary
Early on.
So if given the chance to repeat the flowchart without predetermined coin flips, what decisions would you make differently, if any? And then give at least one reason why you would or would not change your decisions.
Well, I'd like to say that I would have made the decision differently, but I'm not so sure I would have, because I ended up there not being a lot of repercussions or consequences. So I ended my relationship and I got out of it, and I feel really confident with the way things unfolded.
Yeah, I think the only thing I might have changed is from the beginning, maybe not even starting that route, but I am glad where I ended up with saying it.
Okay, so now you've worked through your flow chart. Let's just come together as a large group and let's just kind of hit some high points from the experience. So what are some potential consequences of sexting? What could happen?
Well, you can lose your trust with your parents for getting in trouble.
Once it's posted online, it's there forever.
Forever, okay.
You might get in trouble at school and have your reputation ruined. People might make fun of you or tease you behind your back.
But what if they promise they're not going to let it out? They're just going to keep it to themselves.
You should never believe when people tell you that. Because what if your relationship ends, or what if they get peer pressured into sharing? The temptation is just too high, and they may share with like one friend, and then all of a sudden
It starts with one person and gets to 30. And
Yeah. Could somebody else get a hold of that phone and maybe their significant other didn't share it, but maybe somehow it got out? So the grandma rule really applies here. What was the grandma rule?
you don't want your grandma to see it, don't share it.
Send it, share it, post it.
There you go, great.
Oops.
Okay, so with the kinesthetic approach, what you did not see is some of the, believe it or not, the outtakes. That was our best one, where actually within that sexting flow chart, one of the first times we ran through it, it ended up in a scenario where the person was in trouble at school, the police were involved, and so we know that sexting is a very real thing. And so for us, I think the first time we walked through it, the ending was different, but very, very real. And so
in the layout that we just showed you, we had them walk through the chart together, but you can also put two students in a chart and they can each have their coin, and they might split out and go different directions. Oh, you said yes, you said no. And so you'll get a lot of interaction, a lot of banter that way as well.
Yeah. And so we had them talk through, or in the video, we talked through the consequences of sexting. We just want to mention this is like, you could do this as a lesson extension if you needed more time, or assign this as homework in terms of making sure that your students or your participants got the key takeaways
and are internalizing it at their own personal level.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I know we're a little over, so if you have to go, we will be sad, but we understand. What we want to hear from you all, and feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat feature, whatever you feel comfortable with, is for us to really think about how in this method does the coin flip or the predetermined choice aid in teaching young people the decision-making process. So how is this potentially different or unique than maybe what we've seen before? If you're feeling brave and want to share.
I think it allows them to see what might happen if they made a different choice than what they think they would have, what choice they thought they would make.
Yeah, absolutely. So it allows them to kind of see the consequences, because a lot of times you think you might make the right choice or the healthy choice, but in the real world, right, there's lots of temptations and peer pressure, and you might actually do something that, you know, you may not confess to doing throughout the lesson. Oh, values, sorry. Multitasking gets them thinking about different perspectives. It makes things more real. I love that, Haley. So yeah, because the real world, there's lots of pressure. It gets them thinking through the consequences. So, and values check. So absolutely. And then the last question for us to really kind of think through is, we all play some sort of an education role. So what is our responsibility for teaching young people about digital citizenship and being safe and responsible online?
I mean, is it really our deal in the schools? Is this something should be taught at home, or do we have to play a role? What are your thoughts? We'll take at least 3 oral answers. This is like torture when you're on.
Well, they're
Zoom.
doing.
There you go. We do see the chat. Thank you.
Yeah. So both home and school, absolutely, right? And it helps if we're having consistent messaging. I know earlier there was a mention of, you know, parents setting up accounts for their children who are underage, and obviously that is a huge concern. And so, you know, we would want to make sure that this could also be something like an activity that you could do with parents as well, or involve them in some sort of homework or kind of extension for your lesson, for sure.
You know, the chat came through that said, you know, we need a curriculum on this, and I would agree. But I could foresee even using this at like a PTO type of meeting, because parents are not aware of what really is happening when students are online, and it kind of brings up some of the what's for parents. And so as educators, we play a role not only to educate our children on our students on how to be safe, but also to open the eyes of those adults who are influential, who need to be resources and need to know how to be resources as well.
Angela,
this is Larry. One of the things that I thought about is just awareness and reminders, because sometimes we get so caught up into everyday kinds of thinking that we sometimes just need to be reminded of what we're doing, because texting and all these other things that we do is so normal. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have a reminder every once in a while to do it, that's what I see my role as a reminder and making them aware. And I just have to comment, I really, truly love what you did here. This is great. And the flipping of the coin, my goodness, I just, the moment you started going down that, I said, wow, this is great. And I thought it was just really, really good, because it does get kids to think. If you can get them to think and pause and think for a little bit, I think then you can really plant those seeds.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that.
I was just going to comment about Angela's comment in the chat about modeling. You know, adults can learn some of these digital citizenship skills too. So yeah, just as educators, what we model and how we present ourselves online is very important. And Sarah, you made a really good comment about, you know, not always receiving this information at home. And so, yeah, it is our responsibility as educators to teach how to be safe and responsible online, because there is some thinking sometimes that, you know, things just go away right? Especially on a lot of social media platforms like on TikTok and Snapchat, there's this idea that like, oh, they just go, like these messages just disappear, but we know that, you know, it never really goes away. It might just become unavailable in the moment. So,
well, we want to thank you for joining us today. It was a delight getting to see you all, and we hope that you find value and this methodology useful, and go out and do good things, protect our babies, and help our parents be better parents.